Well, the full story of my childhood I really never talked about until a few years ago. I was in Chillicothe and with my daughters that day, and I felt like I needed to share the story. When I was Speaker of the House, I was working on some adoption legislation, and I had been asked by the people from the Adoption Network whether or not I wanted to find out the story of my biological mother, because I was adopted. And I said, sure. And I always knew I was adopted, and I knew generally about her, but I didn't realize just what a brave woman she was. And the reason that I said sure is because I always wanted to send her a letter. I always wanted to let her know that things had turned out right. It turned out great. I was a Speaker of the House at the time and had a great family, and I just wanted to say thanks. And so they did the research on her, and I found out she had already died in 1996, and so I never got to send her that letter. That letter's still at home on my computer. But what I learned made me appreciate the tough choice that she had even more, and the tough situation she was in life. She had two boys, a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and she had lost her husband somehow. And she was pretty poor, and she was having a hard time making ends meet, and she became pregnant from another man. And he told her that he would support her, but he wanted her to have an abortion because he didn't want her to have, he didn't want another mouth to feed. And I could imagine her in that position as a single mom living in poverty, and she didn't know what to do. But finally she reached out and made the choice of having an adoption. And that was obviously the decision of my life. And from there I lived in a foster home in Detroit for a short time, and then was adopted. That's when I hit the lottery, because I got great parents. And parents are the most important blessing that a child can ever have, because that's the foundation for their lives. And my mom and dad, Jim and Judy Husted, raised me in Montpelier, Ohio. It's a small town in northwest Ohio, and they taught me great values: hard work, personal responsibility, introduced me to faith and family in a really meaningful way, and always told me growing up that I could do anything that I wanted. They always believed in me, even though neither one of them had ever gone to college. They wanted me to have that opportunity, and I tell you, it made all the difference in the world. I wouldn't be here today running for governor without them, and without a great biological mom who made a choice that gave me an opportunity to have life and all that's come since. And so I've been tremendously blessed, and I try to remember that every day. And growing up in a secure family with great parents is the greatest blessing I'll ever have. Well, I've always been a big advocate for adoption and foster care, and anything that any adult can do to help change a child's life. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't be here today were it not for my parents and the opportunities they gave me. But we've seen with the opioid crisis just some terrible circumstances that kids are facing. In some counties, you have 4 times as many foster kids that are under the care of Children's Services than you had just a decade ago. And those kids are seeing just some terrible circumstances. Either they're born addicted to drugs, or their parents are addicted to drugs, and they really are having a hard time getting ahead. We have a there are a lot of sad stories out there about that, and I would encourage anybody who can impact this by becoming a foster parent to do so. I know my wife is involved with CASA in trying to help be advocates for those kids, and I have met a lot of wonderful people who are foster parents. But a happy story about this, I will tell you, but it starts out sad. Matt Damschroeder, who's the chief of staff in my office, he and his wife Carrie have become foster parents, and they got a call one day about a young baby Q, who had been born at 1.7 pounds and had been addicted to heroin at the time. Her mother gave birth and just left the hospital, and and so baby Q had nobody, and Matt and Carrie cared for her. They went to the hospital and fed her and gave her love and held her and rocked her and did all they could, and asked all of us to say prayers for her when she went through the 5 surgeries that she had. And thanks to the heroic efforts of some great caring people like Matt and Carrie, and then the wonderful doctors and caregivers at Nationwide Children's, baby Q's name is now Etta, and Etta has made it, and she's home with Matt and Carrie and in the process of being adopted. And that's a great news story, and shows you the power of what a couple of caring, loving people can do to change the fortunes of a young child. And if you have the capacity to do that, please try, and please do, because you can save a child and change their world. Team sports are great because, you know, it's like life. Nothing you do on your own. You got to work with other people to get things done. And playing football teaches you self-discipline. It teaches you toughness. You know, you're gonna get knocked down. You got to get back up. You got to have some fire and some fight in you to get things done. And I, of all the things I've done in my life, I've not enjoyed anything more than playing football in high school and in college, and the opportunity to start, frankly, from the bottom when I arrived on campus, to ultimately becoming an All-American defensive back and playing on a national championship team. That was a great blessing in life. I literally could not ask for anything more. I still have, you know, one of the fun things about the campaign is that I get to see a lot of my teammates. They come out from Cleveland, Cincinnati, a lot of guys I spent a lot of time with during those years playing football at the University of Dayton. Are still around and still friends, and we've created bonds and memories that will last a lifetime. Well, you know, I grew up in Montpelier, Ohio, and I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. That's what I went to college to do. I actually wanted to be a college football coach, and was coaching at the University of Dayton, and had an interview at the University of Toledo at the time to be an assistant football coach there, defensive back coach, and they had ultimately offered the job to somebody else, and I didn't get it, so I went back to Dayton and started to volunteer more on this congressional campaign that I was involved in. Well, a couple of months later, the University of Toledo calls me back and says that the guy that they had offered the job to took one somewhere else, and if I wanted the job, it was mine. So I had a choice to make at that point in time. Do I want to coach football, or do I want to stay in Dayton and maybe pursue something else? So I went down to the campaign and I said to them, hey, I got this job offer at the University of Toledo. I think I might take it. And they said, well, we would hire you here to run the campaign if you'd be willing to stay. So that was kind of the fork in the road in my life about whether I was going to go into coaching or go into politics. And I stayed and managed the campaign, which we ultimately lost. Perhaps it wasn't a good choice, because the coach at the University of Toledo at the time was a guy by the name of Nick Saban, who ultimately went on to coach the Miami Dolphins, and now is makes $11 million, I think, now working as the head coach of the University of Alabama. So I perhaps chose a less lucrative outcome, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And plus, I still got to coach my kids in youth sports, so that's how I get my athletic fix. I tell you what, I really would like to make Ohio a place that is so much more efficient. By the time I'm done with my first term as governor, I want to make sure Ohio is a place where you never have to go into another government office again to do your work. That you should be able to do it all online, all remotely, all electronically. You may enjoy your experience at the BMV. I guess we'll give you that opportunity for the future, but frankly, we don't need to do that anymore. Ohio's got to innovate. A lot of things are going to change over the next few years. The next decade in our nation, frankly, things are going to probably change at a faster pace than they ever have before. And the states that are ready for that are going to be the ones that win. The states that aren't will fall behind. And that's true of our people too. We've got to lift them up, lift their skills up, help them become more competitive so that they can make Ohio more attractive for the jobs of the future, and they can get the jobs of the future. And look, we can make Ohio a much more efficient place. And if you take the cost out of bureaucracy like we've done in the Secretary of State's office, then you have that money to return to the taxpayers or to use for education or things like that are important priorities without burdening the taxpayer anymore. So efficiency effectiveness, accountability. Those are the terms and the goals for an administration that I would like to lead. Well, frankly, it's going to be job creation and education. That's where it all starts. You got to have a healthy economy, and you got to help prepare people to compete. But I really want to speak to the frustrations that voters have. I'll just quickly run down through this. This is what a lot of people in Ohio are facing. They've seen college costs go up by nearly 200% over the last 20 years. They've seen healthcare costs go up by 138%. Childcare costs go up by 120%, but their wages have only gone up by 42%. And so they're feeling squeezed. They feel like they're working harder and falling behind. These are the people that turned out in record numbers to vote for Donald Trump, and they are the people who are frustrated with government and big business and the elites who they believe are running this country in a way that does not serve them. And they're becoming ever more frustrated by the fact that they see a lot of people who can work but won't work. And they believe in a world where, look, if you work hard and you live by the rules, that you should be able to get ahead. And those people are crying out for leadership. And they're going to be my priority when I'm governor, to make sure that we're creating the jobs of the future so that they can have them, and that we're giving them the job training, the vocational training, the right kind of skills to get those jobs so that they can earn more and have a better lifestyle. And it's fighting for them that really, I believe, my campaign will be all about, and my governorship. Well, I think it's time for new ideas and a new generation of leadership for Ohio. And I want to make sure that no matter how you grew up, the American dream is alive for you right here in Ohio. Well, growing up, I never thought I'd, run for any office. Never thought I'd meet a governor, let alone be the governor. And this has been a real blessing in life. Being in the General Assembly, I just went there to represent my community. The Dayton area, a lot of people there were frustrated that they couldn't get the legislature and the folks in Columbus to be responsive to the things that they needed in the community. So frankly, I just ran for the legislature to try to solve the problems in my community. At the time, I was working in economic development at the Dayton Chamber of Commerce, and it seemed like the right thing to do for the community that I cared about. But after getting here with term limits, I had an opportunity to move into an even bigger role as Speaker of the House. And so I ran for Speaker and was elected by my colleagues and had the opportunity to serve as Speaker of the House for 4 years. Things that we did there that I was most proud of were probably the tax reform package we did, including the largest income tax cut in Ohio history, and school choice for kids trapped in failing schools through the Ed Choice scholarship that we created. Things like that were really meaningful, economic development, education, which are passions of mine. But that opportunity really gave me a chance to work with the Senate, work with the governor, work with the House, understand all the varied interests around the state. And that was a great exposure and experience for me to learn a lot. I really believe that my time as Speaker of the House those 4 years were probably the 4 years that I learned the most professionally of anything in my life. And then from there, after being term limited, enjoyed some time in the Ohio Senate where I got to work on a lot of election-related issues and tried to really advance the cause of redistricting reform, which ultimately passed as a constitutional amendment a couple of years ago. And then as Secretary of State, well, you're no longer out of the legislature. You're no longer in the legislature. It's an executive branch office where you gotta call your own shots. And really, what's prepared me there is that I've learned to take on tough things like lawsuits from Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and George Soros-sponsored organizations, fighting for the goal of keeping Ohio a place where it's easy to vote and hard to cheat. And those were difficult, but also it's the business side. I took my Chamber of Commerce hat and tried to make Ohio an easier place to start a business through the Secretary of State's office. What used to take 4 days to form a business now takes usually less than 4 hours. We cut the prices from $125 down to $99 to start a business. And as a result of better customer service and lower prices, we've set records every year for the number of new business starts in my office. And we're up 30% from when I started. And probably even the better news to the taxpayers is that as a result of all those efficiencies, I no longer need any tax dollars to run my office. So we cut fees by 21%, and we no longer need any tax dollars to run my office anymore. A lot of times people run for office as fiscal conservatives, but they don't walk the talk, and I've tried to do that. So that's really been a learning opportunity for me, an opportunity to take ideas and turn them into real policies, and to try to transform the economy and education, and to also show that I'm willing to take on the status quo to change things, and as a result, the taxpayers benefit from it. Well, I am blessed to have a wonderful wife. My wife Tina and I also have 3 wonderful children, Alex, Katie, and Kylie, and we wake up, hey, when you're an adopted kid like me that started where I started, you have no reason to be anything but grateful every day. But what keeps us grateful and what keeps us focused and what keeps us grounded is our faith. Our faith is a really important part of our lives as a family, as public servants, as brothers and sisters, and neighbors and friends. Our faith is an incredibly important part of our lives, and we don't use our faith as a way to tell other people how to live their lives. We just use it as a guide on how we're supposed to live ours and how we're supposed to serve others. That's the foundation for why I do or continue to do public service, is that it's supposed to be about helping other people. And I've been given many blessings in life, and I'm trying to share those blessings by trying to help other people through my public service. And I've seen the miracles that people who rely on faith how they can transform their lives. I've seen it from opioid addicts to people who've had challenges in their families and their marriages, with health, all of those kinds of things. I've seen the power of faith at transforming people's lives, and it's important to my life, and I hope to spread that word to anybody who's willing to listen.